Welcome to the Whistleblower Newsroom. I'm Christina Borgeson. Frank Gregory Ford had served in various branches of the U.S. military for more than 30 years when he arrived in Iraq right before the war started. He was stationed there as a non-commissioned counterintelligence officer of the California Army National Guard, under the command of the 205th Military Intelligence Brigade. He was also a U.S. Navy corpsman and a U.S. Army medic. Barely 3 months after arriving in Iraq, Ford found himself strapped to a stretcher, drugged, and renditioned out of Iraq, all at the behest of his commanding officer. When he arrived in the U.S., Ford was accused of treason and espionage. Why? Well, that's the subject of Midnight in Samarra, the true story of WMD, greed, and high crimes in Iraq, a book about Ford's mind-blowing discoveries that prompted an immediate and brutal response from his higher-ups in the US, most likely at the behest of others even higher up. The book was written with the help of author Eleanor Cooney, who captured Ford's voice and experiences in an account so vivid and disturbing, I had to read it in increments. Reading it will radically rearrange your perspective on 9/11, the Iraq War, the US government, and the country's political leaders, who in this book would by a long shot win the title over its greatest criminals of all time, if they were ever held accountable. Ford is with me to talk today about his experience as a medic, which got him renditioned. This interview with Ford is the third of 3 hours that the Whistleblower Newsroom has conducted with him. Welcome, Greg.
Thank you, Christina.
So, talk to me about where you were a medic and what happened.
Right now, all right. In the days of Iraq, I was sent as a medic, and of course I had many years prior to this with the Navy, and so I was very experienced in dealing with prisoners of war, also with my own people. I had to be the medic. I was the sole medic for my group of, which was an intelligence unit, and I had to deal with them too. And I had to deal with a very sticky issue of who my people in my group interrogated. And unfortunately, the interrogated people, the prisoners of war, we'll call them that, detainees, in a place called Abu Ghraib prison. And I need to say, everyone watching this, I can comfortably say that everyone knows exactly what happened in Abu Ghraib. And I was the medic, and you can probably say comfortably that I was between a rock and a hard spot, between my people and also the detainees, the Iraqi detainees, and any prisoners of war that we took to Abu Ghraib, and also specifically Saddam Hussein's banker. So
now, they didn't call them prisoners of war. Didn't they call them enemy combatants? I mean, I know that's a legal, splicing and dicing. But you were basically there to also treat the detainees who had been, let's say, interrogated or had experienced enhanced interrogations, and you were there to deal with the aftermath of those enhanced interrogations, to take care of the people who had been subjected to that. Is that correct?
yes, that is, and you are correct, Christina, because that was a very fluid term when it comes to prisoners of war and terrorist suspects, detainees. We had all of them, all right. And so, what was ever politically correct in the situation, that's what we called them at the time, all right. So, and remember, we were dealing with a fallout, which was in Guantanamo Bay also. And so I realized what a difficult situation it was going to be in when I had such luminaries as Colonel John Steele, the infamous Lion of Central America, and of the infamous QBARC fame. QBARC stands for the counterterrorism operation that Dick Cheney had named specifically to be in place in Central America. So we had Colonel Steele, Dick
What
Cheney's
was Colonel Steele's role at Abu Ghraib?
Colonel. Let me see. Colonel Steele's role when he showed up there at Abu Ghraib, he was going to quote. This is the exact quote he used: "Get Moais." He was going to get Moais Abu Ghraib prison. He decided that the prisoners that were in Abu Ghraib were being treated too softly, in his exact word.
So he said they were being treated too softly, but you as a medic, can you talk about what you saw and what you had to treat after these enhanced interrogations?
The enhanced interrogations were being run in Building 1A. And the reason why I had to go from Samara to where I was actually assigned to Building 1A, which was Abu Ghraib prison, which was just outside of the airport, in Iraq. And so that's where the prison was located. But the situation was that Building 1A was the central location for all intelligence operations and interrogation of anybody picked up anywhere in Iraq.
Tell me what you saw while you were treating these people.
Okay.
What kinds of things did you treat? What other things did you see there that made Abu Ghraib infamous, but that you actually, as a firsthand witness, saw?
Well, a lot of it is extremely difficult to talk about on film, all right? But everybody could imagine virtually all of what your listeners and viewers have seen on the films that were, the pictures that were taken in Abu Ghraib prison. That's what I was seeing, all right? The 60-minute special, that was just touching on what was happening. That was just the beginning of the violence, the abuse, the brutality, okay, that was happening there at Abu Ghraib. That's what I had to deal with. And I had to deal with two conflicting situations. One, the people that were causing the abuse were my people.
Who exactly, when you say they were your people, who are these people? What are their names and what roles did they play?
Okay, well, of course, I'm limited to say what I can about the intelligence agents, but most of your viewers know these people that were brought up later, like i.e. Lindy England, Specialist Lindy England, who was there, all right, Chip Frederick, who was there, and these were all
those were lower level. They were lower level offenders, though, right? I mean, Lindy England, did she actually torture people?
Okay, well, they were all, and I call them kids. They were all much younger than I was at the time, but the situation was they were actually working and helping us, okay, the intelligence people there at Building 1A. They were providing services that they thought we wanted them to do, like softening up, physically brutalizing the inmates, the detainees. All right, so they were following all of our instructions, because as I have to point out to many investigators, virtually everybody that was at Abu Ghraib in Iraq had undergone extensive education on how to deal with prisoners. We were taught that you don't abuse prisoners extensively, and we signed documentation to that extent that
Yeah,
you do
but
not.
what did you actually see? It's important to me that you tell people what you saw, because
Okay, all
you
right. Well,
personally, because you were a witness. I know there were photographs and so on, but you personally as a witness, I mean, you were moved to blow the whistle. What is it that you saw that moved you to blow the whistle specifically?
the fact that we were staging executions, all right, false, fake execution, but nevertheless, against all provisions of the Geneva Conventions, we were involved extensively, let me see, physically abusing, brutalizing the inmates when they were brought in, beaten to half to death, bloody. They were brought in, and it was always they always excused the situation of what I had to do, what the medical treatment that I had to provide, which and they always it stated to me that they said, oh, this inmate had fallen down a set of stairs
I'll
12
say
times.
they lied
All
to
right.
you about the torture then.
Yes, of course. And then, unfortunately, there were several, like what happened in a situation like with Newsweek. All right, and this can be viewed and investigated. Newsweek showed several uh, inmates in the steps of our building being brutalized in a personnel carrier. They were being beaten bloody. All right, and their heads were wrapped, with head bandages, and so that was one situation. Another
And
situation
some of these
was,
people were kids, right? I mean, 15 years old.
certainly they were kids, and and the thing was, in one morning, I had to deal with uh, four separate heart attacks. Okay, heart attacks where I had to actually uh, diagnose, treat, and restart their hearts. Okay, with cardiac therapy and conditioning, and I had to restart their hearts, and that was one morning, and there wasn't virtually one Iraqi, okay, detainee that was over the age of 14.
What?
Yes, there was, like I said, at least four, and they were so brutalized by our people in the building. And this was in Samara. This was before they were being shipped to Abu Ghraib. All right, they had they had four. This was a receiving center, and the same one that Newsweek photographed. Okay, and there was four. They brought in four kids, and surprised, they would come in and say to me, Doc, we have another one. And they were, when I walked into the room, they were usually, the detainees were in a corner, either unconscious, totally unconscious, and it turns out that their hearts had stopped.
Wow.
And and this will give you an idea of the abuse that the the Iraqis were undergoing at our hands. And so it was my job to get their hearts going again. Okay. And so, but that was another situation. And the one that I still, and it's actually giving me difficulty saying this, speaking about this, I walked in and I had one of my people, my intelligence people, look at me, and say, Doc, get that piece of crap out of here. Okay. And deal with him. And I said, okay. What? I looked, and there was a young man on fire in the corner, unconscious. All right, and so we had to put the flames out, and I had to treat him and revive him and take him out of the interrogation room. Okay, and from there he was taken to Abu Ghraib prison for further treatment. All right, that this and then another case, okay, as a follow on to that, an adjunct, as they termed it in their reports, an adjunct case. I walked in and there was a young man looking at me desperately, an Iraqi, as in please help me, and I couldn't figure out what was wrong with him. I looked at him, and I finally, and the young man passed out in my arms. I looked, and in each ear was a lit cigarette burning in each ear. All right, so
Who did that?
the people that I was with, my
Well,
fellow,
I mean, you mentioned a guy named, in your book, you mentioned a guy named Stavros.
yes,
Who's
that
that?
Stavros was and that's not his name, by the way. I have
Oh,
to do that for protection. But the thing was, is he was a fellow, he was a fellow intelligence agent, and he was part of the group, and he was a was a Greek, a Greek of national, a Greek national, and he said he was there to make sure that he gave these Arabs that had abused his own country, okay, Greece in this case, Greece. He said he was there to make sure that they got what uh, the what they gave his national people, the Greeks. He was going to give them the same abuse.
so what was the last straw for you that caused you to say, okay, I'm going to blow the whistle on this?
Well, the thing is, when you say blow the whistle, it wasn't a horn blowing moment. Okay, I had walked in, and this was after the situation of Abu Sager, the banker of Saddam Hussein, who had been taken when he was in my custody and taken to Abu Ghraib and beaten to death, and beaten to death, and then I realized that he had been brought, that his body had been brought to the Balad hospital infirmary, and he had been dropped by the CIA. They had opened from an SUV, opened the tailgate, and dropped him on the steps of the Balad unit, the MASH unit that they had, the hospital unit, threw him on the sidewalk, and then drove away. Okay, and this was Abu Sager. Virtually everybody in the world knows who Abu Sager is. All right, and so I said, I have to I have to I have to tell my command that this is going on, because I was getting um, uh, communications from the Iraqis that said, look, we know what you're doing. We know the abuse, and we're tired of listening to the screams of our children coming out of the police stations. All right? We're tired of you murdering our people. This is what I was given as as a communication. And they said, look, they said, we trust you. All right, Gregory Ford, Dr. Ford, they trust me. All right, so, but you are warned, and if you are in this position longer than 2 or 3 days, we are going to blow you up, and we're going to destroy the unit that you are in. And this was within the city of Samara, and so I sent the word. I sent the word to my commander, as in Lieutenant Colonel Drew Timothy Ryan, all right, and Captain Victor Artiga, and also Colonel Thomas Pappas. Everybody can look at, everybody knows who this is, all right, and uh, to include their records at Abu Ghraib. Everyone and all your viewers can see who they are by just looking up these names. And but the thing was, is that I said, I told my command, I said, please, we're in a very bad position, very bad situation. We're completely controlled by a group of people that are armed to the teeth. The Iraqis are armed to the teeth. They can completely destroy our unit anytime they want. Please do not abuse these people anymore. Stop it. And they said, they looked at me right in the eye and they said, look, we don't care what you think. All right. And if you don't like it, leave. They told me that. And I said, well, look, they have the Iraqis have said they're going to destroy our building in Samarra, and which they did. The Iraqis blew up our building and leveled it. And this is exactly what I reported to the command, and I reported to the magazine, the German magazine in Europe, Der Spiegel. All right, is that the Iraqis drove and what was called a V-bed, a vehicle delivered bomb, which leveled the building and left several American soldiers that are still in the building today. As of this moment, the dead are still in that building. All right, so that's what had happened as a result of me reporting, reporting this abuse, this case, this situation, and so immediately the command came to me and said, "All right, fine, I know what you said, I know what you told us. Now you are going to let me see, how do they put it? Oh, you're going to talk to a psychiatrist. And we don't care if you want to go or not. You're going to go talk to a psychiatrist. And then we are going to ship you out. We're going to strap you to a stretcher and fly you out of Iraq with no orders and rendition you. You don't have a choice in the matter. All right. And of course, I said, are you, at that point, my last statement to them was, are you people insane? Have you people lost your goddamn minds? And they said, look, we don't care what you think. You are leaving. All right. We're going to strap you to a stretcher and we're going to find out what you have to say about several things. All right. And that of course is the subject of my next book. But the thing is this is they were concerned about my reports about the torture and abuse, which the whole world, all your viewers have seen. All the material that your viewers have seen about Abu Ghraib prison, that all came from me. All right. So we had the issue of the 60-minute news release that showed all the abuse, and it was actually kind of a homecoming session for me,
Had
as you
you
might
been
imagine.
renditioned yet when that came out?
Well, let me see. Yes, I had been renditioned. I'd been flown into the CIA station in Ramstein, Germany. All right, and of course, the situation when I landed at Ramstein, Germany. All right, I was approached by several people, and they came to me and they said, "What did you see? What was going on in Iraq?" And I told them, and they said, "Oh my God, this is a scandal beyond description." All right, you saw this? And I said, "Yes, it's going on right now, and these are the people in my command that are responsible for it."
Now, who ordered you to be renditioned? Was that Thomas Pappas?
That was Thomas Pappas. That was Lieutenant Colonel Ryan. All right, and the thing was, and this is where it gets dicey. I didn't realize at the time that my general, which should have made, this is Janice Karpinski, who made all the statements to the Supreme Court. She wrote the supporting documents on my case for the Supreme Court. She said if she had known, about what was happening with me, that never would have happened.
So they hid that from her. They hid that from her. So
Absolutely.
now what happened was they said, and this is classic. I mean, if they want to get rid of you in the military or the government or whatever, they always say, you know what, we think that mentally you're a little off. You got to go, go see the shrink. So you went to see this woman, right? Madeira,
Right.
right? And basically, she just did what she was ordered to do, which was to say, well, at first, didn't she say she thought you were fine?
Yes. Very interesting. We spoke, and the thing was, is I said, look, I know what's going on here. You do too. And she said, well, I've only been in the military for 2 weeks. And I said, oh, okay. So here's what's going on. And I told her it was a war crimes. It was a war crimes cover up in every extent, you know, of the word. And so at that point, she said, okay, all right, go back to your unit. And of course, great. So I walked back to my unit, and they were, and the unit, the commander, and this was Colonel Ryan, okay, who and Captain Artiga, and especially this was very interesting. This point was, and very few people know about this situation, but Janet Skarpinski, General Karpinski knows, is that Ryan walked back in front of me. He walked back. He had no idea I'd been released, you know, with a statement of being fine, blah blah blah. And I walked back, and Ryan was in a conference with Colonel Thomas Pappas, and I walked up behind him, and they didn't realize I was there, and both of them were saying, "Well, what are we going to do about this guy, this whistleblower?" Okay, and this, by the way, this statement is in the court documents of the Supreme Court. These statements, and the colonel said, "Well, what we can do is we'll make sure we don't tell Janice Karpinski anything. All right, we'll just ship this guy out, strap him to a stretcher, and we'll drug him up the first thing so he doesn't say anything to anybody, so nobody hears anything." And at that point, this is when Ryan, Lieutenant Colonel Ryan, walked back and proceeded to threaten Merle Madeira. All right, Dr. Merle Madeira threatened her with
The
arrest.
psychiatrist, yeah.
Right, with arrest, and if she didn't comply with the renditioning and torturing of me. And one of the things, as I found out later, was when I was undergoing this MK Ultra torture, was that they wanted to know about everything that had been said concerning Operation Copper Green.
And what's Operation right? Copper Green?
And Operation Copper Green, as okay, it's a magic process, a huge process to subjugate the American people and the American government by utilizing certain types of processes, developed processes that the CIA had organized and put together, where they were going to basically utilize the Abu Ghraib prisons, and they were going to utilize what are called black site, CIA black site operation sites, and they were going to subjugate several other countries that had been directed.
So basically, from what I understand, Copper Green is, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that it's basically Abu Ghraib was the test case for working out the kinks, but the Copper Green is the globalization of a black site network for renditioning and torturing everywhere, including the United States, when necessary, to get whatever the desired outcome is for the intelligence community. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. And what they are, these black sites are designed, all paid for by the CIA. But the thing is that they were designed to receive in several countries that we were busy arranging uh, agreements with, was whoever these dictators were in these countries, they were going to get rid of their troublemakers.
Yeah, so it's a service. It's like a renditioning and black site service for
Right,
whoever has the money to pay for it, for whoever's in power, who wants to maintain that power through eliminating inconvenient citizens.
right.
Wow.
Okay.
And that's a
And
global operation.
that was a global operation, as I found out, where they had
Including the
euphemistic.
United States, right? Am I wrong in saying?
Oh yes, and it was, of course, in the best traditions of American capitalism, because they were going to have these countries pay for their renditioning and torturing of their fellow citizens and shipped out to be disappeared. Okay, for a service. Now this is for a service. It's the American way, where they take people from other countries and they can either torture them, okay, very professionally, torture them in these black site facilities, keep them there, and if the if they find and gather any information that that can be used to maintain that dictator in power, while all the natural resources are being plundered from that country, whoever it is, all right, they can at that point, they can decide the host country that's giving all these troublemakers, okay, quote, terrorists, they're always called terrorists,
Yes,
okay,
yes.
all right, and they can actually take these people and have them disposed of, okay.
So so let me ask you something here. Um, is Copper Green still going on?
I believe it is, yes, and let me see, I believe, the,
So you
who
don't
was
really
the
know. You think it is, but you're not sure.
Well, the reason why I base that right now on Russia Today, there's a whole documentary that anybody can look at, watch concerning the CIA black site operations going on all over Europe, going on over Asia. All right, all these places they do have black site operations, and guess who's paying for them? Most people forget this. It's the American people that initiated this process, and the actual event that brought this whole uh, operation to the fore was as I understand, was 9/11. 9/11 was the opening event,
Well,
and
it's interesting because you say in your book, or I don't know if it was in your book, if you had said this to me, and it really struck me. You said 9/11 was the ad campaign that got us into the war on terror.
absolutely,
You
because
know?
when you look at all of the legislative operations and special counterterrorism procedures, that's when they were initiated. That's when
Yeah.
this huge
Yeah.
public trough for all these intelligence groups that before, hair two before, they couldn't get funding. All right. You know, these groups like, what was it?
Well, they were
Um,
making their own money drug dealing and stuff, doing that stuff, but I
oh,
guess it wasn't
right.
enough.
Exactly. Well,
So wait,
that,
but we're getting off track here because I really want to. So Pappas goes back to Madeira, Colonel Pappas, and says, "This you've got to change your diagnosis of this man and get him so that we can get him out of here, right?"
right. Yeah.
And then
right.
go ahead.
Exactly.
And
And so
then
what,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. So this is all very difficult to speak about,
I
okay, as you
know.
might imagine. Remember, I'm suffering all the medical issues that were given to me during those torture sessions and interrogation sessions by MK Ultra drugs. All right, so it's giving me great grief even to have this interview going. All right,
I
and
understand.
recounting these issues. So, what the the situation happened is that yes, Lieutenant Colonel Ryan marched back to to Merle Madera and said, okay, I don't care what you think. And this is what she told me, by the way. She told me, he said exactly what this is an intelligence operation. It's not a medical operation, it's an intelligence operation. You are going to take this person out of Iraq. All right. And there's going to be no trace of him ever leaving Iraq. And we want you to know that. And we want it done by this afternoon. All right. So surprise, next thing I know, I had 4 great big beefy guys show up with a stretcher and said, we are taking you onto a plane, renditioning you onto a plane right now. And for good measure, there were several what were called Delta Force operations people, part of the group. All right. And so I said, right, think again. And they said, we don't care what you think. You're going on this stretcher right now. And Merle Madera at that point walks in and says, no, let me talk to me. She said, let me talk to me. And she said to me, look, you're going on a stretcher whether you want to or not. You need to understand something right now. What this command in this intelligence group says is that they're terrified of what you have to say about Abu Ghraib, all right, and the bioweapons program.
They're as terrified. Well as Copper Green. They wanted you to know
right,
that.
Right, exactly. Well, Copper Green
is part of Abu Ghraib. Yeah.
Right, okay. Exactly.
Right.
It's all part of the big program.
Now they made you go on a stretcher because you were going on an airplane full of wounded, right?
Right.
And the pilot said, I'm not having somebody walking in on 2 legs coming into my airplane. And that's when they forced you onto that gurney, right? Forced you onto that stretcher.
That's correct. All right. There were 4 of them, and they said, okay, all right. And Madera said, look, for appearance sake, please cooperate. and so she asked me to lie down on the stretcher, and they strapped me in immediately, picked me up, and took me onto the plane.
Now, you were accompanied by somebody named Pia Navarro, right?
I'm sorry?
You were accompanied by somebody on the plane named Pia Navarro? Did you hear
sorry,
what? You were accompanied on the plane by someone named Pia Navarro, right?
Pia Navarro.
Yeah.
Okay, that name doesn't ring a bell.
I thought this was, maybe I'm getting confused. I thought this was the person who was on the airplane with you and injected you with the sodium amytal.
Oh, okay. Well, that wasn't the name. I understand.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
But it was, there were actually, a surprise, a specialist that shows up, okay, by the name of I believe his name was Peter Bauer.
Okay.
Peter Bauer. And like I say, we're going back a few years here, but Peter Bauer, and he was a, quote, psychiatrist, all right, unquote, and along with Merle Madera, who okay, and Merle Madera ordered, first of all, she ordered 1 injection, okay, a specialized injection for intelligence people that are being renditioned and where they're going to be receiving sodium amytal.
Amytal.
Right, an MK Ultra drug for interrogating intelligence people specifically. All right, this injection was part of a strictly forbidden program
Yeah,
by,
Nuremberg prohibited, right?
right. Well, the thing was, yes, but it was part of the Nuremberg uh, program, the Nuremberg conventions that said, do not give anybody any kind of Sidney Gottlieb derivatives for interrogation. Do not give them to them. It's against all laws, international laws. And that was one of the things that he specifically gave me was the sodium amytal drugs. And part of the reason why in Nuremberg, as they said, these drugs destroy things like your heart, okay, your lungs, your brain, all right? And so, and of course, there wasn't a pen pal situation here with all these people injecting me with these horrible things or drugs. But all I remember is losing consciousness. And I vaguely remember being asked about copper green and something called the bioweapons program. All right, they were asking about the bioweapons program specifically, okay, because it was connected, the bioweapons program was connected to George H.W. Bush and his assignment, as his assignment to the ambassadorship of China. All right, that's that's what I had sent my reports in about these topics, and
Okay.
that's why right, and that's why I knew about those topics.
So when you got to Germany, apparently before you landed, the Germans were had gotten word from your lawyer, your JAG lawyer, that you were on that plane against your will, and the Germans had contacted the airplane, right, and said you can't land here if you have brought somebody here against their will. And they lied and said, no, absolutely not. That's not the case. Is that correct?
Your information is very amazing, okay, and very correct. Yes, that is what happened, and at that time, fortunately, Kevin Healy, a JAG lawyer, Judge Advocate General, JAG lawyer, all right, he had gotten word that I was being forcibly renditioned and flown out, and he specifically got onto a plane he got onto a plane in California and was flying to Baghdad, all right, to meet with a General Stan McChrystal.
Mm-hmm.
And the word came down, as I understand it, like I say, when you're unconscious, it's hard to get everything straight, all right? But as the situation was that somehow, some way on the plane, the German government, and this was confirmed with Helmar Buchel of Der Spiegel, all right, magazine. The German government contacted the plane and said, "Is there somebody on this plane against their will?" And that's when Merle Madera specifically went up to the cockpit of the plane. It was a C-37 airplane specifically designed for these operations. She went up and she contacted the German government, and she lied specifically to them, saying that yes, uh, there was nobody there involuntarily being flown out and renditioned and tortured on that plane. And at that point, the plane landed, and sometime, some way, somewhere, I was actually beginning to recover some consciousness. And I specifically, by the way, I specifically cut myself out of that stretcher. I cut myself out.
Wow.
All right.
Okay.
And you can imagine what kind of state of mind I was in. But the thing was that the plane was landing. The plane was landing in at that point. When I looked out the window, the plane was right over the top of the Rock of Gibraltar. leaving the Mediterranean. And so at that point, we flew into Ramstein, Germany. That is the same base where right now, where what was it, 3 weeks ago, where the CIA director Gina Haspel, okay, was wounded in a shootout, okay,
Right.
with special forces Green Berets in Ramstein at the CIA station.
So tell me something. What happened when you arrived in the United States?
Oh, well, I've never seen so many people running around trying to cover their butts, as they say. Okay, CYA, all
Yeah.
right. And so let me see. Before I left Germany, I had several people of high rank come to me and say, "What did you see in Iraq?" And I told them, and the status at that point was, "Oh my God!" And then they asked me, "Where are your orders leaving Iraq?" And I said, are you kidding? You better call the command. And they said, we have. They don't have any record of you ever leaving Iraq. The command didn't. And so the next thing, the next situation was, well, okay, I received word that first of all, that the Merle Madeira, okay, who was there in Ramstein with me, and that Bauer, Dr. Bauer, okay, they were being sent somewhere else very quickly. They were being flown out very quickly from Ramstein. And at that point, and of course, it's all conjecture where they went. And so the situation, and it got pretty murky from there. And within a day, within 8 hours after I'd landed, I had several people, including a Colonel Sai, TSAI. Colonel Sai came to me and said, "Oh my God, you don't want to go back to Iraq." And I said, "Do I look insane? Do I look crazy?" He said, "No, you don't look crazy. I'm making sure you go home. You don't want to go back to this unit because, as we understand, there's a major scandal of global proportions about to break there."
That was the Abu Ghraib scandal.
Yes, it
Now,
was.
were these guys ever held accountable for what they did to you?
Not only were they not held accountable, they were promoted, which is the classic military intelligence way. They were promoted, and then let me see. Uh, I have to be very exacting with this. Let me see. Colonel Colonel Pappas, Thomas Pappas, was sent to a CIA training school and put in charge of the CIA training school. This was in Langley and a place called Warrenton. He was put in, and I received a call from General Janis Karpinski, and he said, "You're not going to believe this. This little son of a bitch who set me up and set you up, okay, they just promoted him." All right. So he is
Well,
in
that's
right.
a classic cover up. That's a classic cover up move by the government. You see it all the time. Anybody who does the dirty work gets covered in, medals and accolades and gets promoted, so that it sort of sprays them with a good smell under the corruption and rot.
Well, I'm
Over the
sorry.
corruption and rot.
I'm sorry, Christina, but that doesn't make me feel any better
Well,
about what
no, but
happened.
that's what I've seen. I'm just telling you.
Eh,
So what about the other ones? What about
Okay.
Madeira?
Well, let me see. Lieutenant Colonel Ryan, uh, he took all that information about weapons of mass destruction that we mentioned, and he turned right around and contacted the private company, Carlyle, and said, "I know. Here's what I know about you, Carlyle. You have been shipping weapons of mass destruction to Iraq, and I want to really a good six-figure job. What are you going to give me? Carlyle Group. All right. And I have plenty of proof of that. He took
And
the
what did they
information.
give him? What did they give him?
Oh, they gave him a really nice, they even gave him his own specialized intelligence company. All right. That company, if everybody's listening, I hope everybody's listening, that company is called right now, and you can contact them, call them, via the phone landline, is the 3,6 Intelligence Security Group. The 3,6 Intelligence Group.
So did Madeira? I mean, that's medical malpractice to knowingly misdiagnose somebody. What happened to her?
Oh, well, of course. Now there is a complete, and everybody can look her up, look her name up, and you'll see a picture of her. Surprise, you can't see the picture. It's a complete firewall. All right. Now, as I understand it, Der Spiegel magazine and Hilmar Buchel, senior editor, actually traveled to Southern California, and they found out that that Merle Madeira had been placed in charge of a juvenile facility in Riverside County, and they had put her in charge of taking care of troubled children.
Oh my
All
God.
right. Now that makes a lot of sense to put a war criminal, that's what she was, a war criminal in charge of children that are troubled. Okay. And of course, she's an expert at this point of dealing with certain types of psychotropic drugs, all right, that are administered. And then, of course, at this point, if any question of military medical treatment and care, she abrogated all of her responsibilities whatsoever that she had to sit there and rendition and torture me.
Now, we don't have a lot of time left, and I want to get into how certain laws box people like you into an impossible corner where you can't get justice and accountability. And these laws are, I think people need to know about them because really they're not compatible with any kind of democracy that I can think of. One of them is that when you sued Victor Ortiz, you sued Pappas, you sued
Right, the command.
Ryan, you sued, and basically the court came back and agreed that and this was, I forget what the case is, but it was a case against Rumsfeld by somebody who had been tortured, and basically the court came back and said, we agree that these people were operating within the purview of their job description, and that the job descriptions of some people some people in the government does include criminal activity. So, hence they don't have to be held accountable for you. The other law that was used against you is called the Ferris Doctrine, where somebody in the military cannot sue the military for damages. But it's one thing to not be able to sue the military for being hurt doing the job you signed up to do. But apparently this doctrine has no stipulations for people who are abused and hurt and tortured by their commanding officers, And that is not part of either one of their job descriptions. Yours wasn't to submit to torture, and theirs was not to torture you, you know?
Right, exactly. Well, the Fairey's doctrine, which is kept very quiet from the public, no parent, no mother, no father would allow their children to be subjected to an organization that can impose some obscure, nefarious law that quote law that says, oh yeah, well we can wipe your child out, we can subject your child to any toxic substance we feel we want to, and if he dies, oh well. That's
Well,
no
this and there was a guy named Stanley who was in the military, and he volunteered for some, he volunteered for some job, and without him knowing, they gave him LSD. And the his legal team's their complaint was that their rationale for this lawsuit and trying to break down that for us wall was that when military conduct passes so far beyond the bounds of human decency, I do not believe that it can be considered a part of the military mission. And
that's correct.
so
Right. That
far,
was the Olson case, right? The
so
Olson case where he ended up
no, it
jumping
was
out
the
of.
United States versus Stanley.
Oh, okay.
James
I
B.
do.
Stanley.
Frank Olson. I'm familiar with that case.
Yeah, he was. Yes, he was
Right.
LSD and jumping.
And he said, I'm going to blow the whistle on Sidney Gottfried and the MK Ultra program, and which gave us LSD, by the way, Sidney Gottlieb. All right. And so Frank Olson was going to blow the whistle on all the people that had been murdered in conjunction with this program, murdered, and of course, what happened was that 24 hours before he was going to blow the whistle, he was thrown out of a 7-story building in New York.
Right.
All right.
So we don't have much time left, and I just want you to talk. So you've had no justice. Nobody has been held accountable for what happened, right? I want to know what it is you're living with right now because of what happened that nobody's been held accountable for.
Right, exactly. Well, I am living with all the damages, medical damages, physical damages that I have right now, and I spent most of this week alone and yesterday alone being evaluated by certain for certain conditions considered. Let me see. One was my heart situation, which was damaged with this torture, and also as of starting last year, the first part of last year, I lapsed into a coma. All right, and of course my medical team from University of California, Davis, they all said the first thing when I came to when I finally woke up from this coma was they said, have you ever been exposed to any kind of military situation? I said, yes, I have. And they said, have you ever been exposed to any kind of exotic, unusual psychotropic interrogation drugs? And I said, yes, I have. And they said, well, we're finding evidence of that in your system right now. That's probably why you lapsed into a coma. And that's probably why you're going to have to spend most of last year, which I did, most of last year, learning how to speak. Okay. I couldn't speak. When I came to, I could not speak. All right. And so I've been having to learn how to rebuild my whole sense of conversation and how to speak, which I'm having trouble with right now, as you might imagine. So.
Well, listen, I just want to tell you that I think you're a great patriot for standing up, having the courage to continue to stand up and talk about these things. And I want to thank you for coming on this show. Thank you so much, Greg.
Well, thank you so much, Christina. And by the way, I would turn up the volume so I can hear you properly. but the thing is my whole right side is completely numb. All right.
I'm
As a,
sorry.
as
Is
a
that for,
result of that interrogation, I can't hardly use my right side. Okay.
oh my
So,
God.
so that should give you an idea of what resulted from this interrogation and torture session. All right. When and Abu Ghraib has a whole new meaning for me, as you
Oh,
might imagine.
I'm so sorry to hear that. And again, thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I greatly appreciate you. Thank you, Christina.